Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Ag Forecast for South America, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I wanted to start off with some GOES 16 data throughout the day today, and there's a couple of neat things to kind of point out here. The first is I kind of walk through the day today on Thursday before sunset here. Let's start from the south. Here is the most recent front we've been keeping a very close eye on. And then if you move a little bit north of there, you will see just as the peak heating of the day comes in before the sun sets, there was some isolated convection. Now this is nothing compared to what the monsoon can do later on in the season as we approach spring and then get into summer. But there has been some isolated thunderstorm activity here that has locally put down some heavier rainfall, but it's not the uniform coverage that we can get this time of year. The last thing, if I just take you back to this morning and then play through the day, this is called sun glint. That's basically where the sun's rays are reflecting off of the ocean and bouncing back toward the satellite sensor. And you can see that it's running right in through here. And it has almost made its way all the way to the equator, which runs right into this particular area, such that by this time next week, when we are having our equinox, the spring equinox for the southern hemisphere, the fall equinox for the northern hemisphere, that glint will be right over the equator. Just thought I would point that out to you. Now, as we go to the end of this, again, we see some scattered storms, but let's just look back at what the month of September delivered so far. Now, this is satellite-derived precipitation from the 1st of September through the 15th, and the heaviest rainfall has been coming in on these frontal boundaries that have been on a very active southern storm track, okay? And you're going to continue to see that. So what we've had here in some places, which had been very much in drought, like in Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, these areas have now lately seen, in some places, satellite drive numbers are above 6 to 10 inches of rainfall. So we're talking like 200 plus millimeters of rainfall in some places here just in the last 15 days. Most other places here sitting somewhere around 100 to 150. But notice we've been drier over in the east, and there has been some scattered storms in this area, but it has not yet been kind of, I think, what South Americans really fully want to get the planting season started. And over the next 10 days from the 12Z European model, this whole region in through here, where we're still waiting on the monsoon to fully develop, is going to be drier than normal. We do have a low that's moving out, and I'll show you where that one's going in just a few moments, but we have yet to see the full return of a stronger monsoonal flow early in the season here, because now we are one day past the kind of official start to planting. So what are we watching here? Well, if we just step forward through the end of this week toward the weekend, there's still some heavier rains on that front I showed you a few moments ago here to the south, and you can see the big lows that are still way down here south of Argentina, down even close to the Arctic, or the Antarctic, which is down here. So playing through the rest of the day, getting into Saturday now, and working our way out to Sunday. That first front moves out, and we go into a relatively drier weekend. Here we are on Sunday, working into early next week on Monday. There is another front that's expected. You can see early next week that comes out of Argentina and sweeps through Uruguay and eventually through Rio Grande do Sul, so right into this area here. And as we play this forward through the middle of next week, there's another coastal low that forms right in through here, and there's the front that swipes once again through southern Brazil. But you notice as you get into Mato Grosso do Sul, which is south of here, Goiás and Tocantins, which are split up like that, you can see that this area is still staying drier. When does that change? Well, if we just keep going out here using the European model, playing out into the end of next week, getting here toward next weekend, this is next Saturday, we start to see more organized convection, storms showing up here in Brazil's eastern growing area. We're still waiting on that to come back to this area. But that's why when you look back here over the last, that 10-day time period, you saw better rainfall happening east. So again, when does that get there? Well, let's just play through. This is through the weekend right there. So much of our weekend precipitation is concentrated in southern Brazil and, of course, in the Amazon. But we're drier other than some isolated storms in this area moving forward through early next week. And then as we get out there through the middle of next week, toward the end of next week, and then finally into next weekend, that's when we start to see on Saturday of next week better chances of rain coming through this section of eastern Brazil. Now from here, what I want to do is I'm going to stretch this out and look at the precip, the longer term precip, in a couple of different ways. The first way is to show you the probability of getting an inch of rain through the next 10 days. So we know that it's concentrated mostly in southern Brazil and then in the Amazon. But we do see that in this area that there's a chance, it's a lower chance here, but we could pick up, there's a 20 to 30% chance of grabbing an inch of rain through the next 10 days. And an inch of rain is roughly 40 millimeters, somewhere in that neighborhood, 30 to 40 millimeters, just in general. So if we're seeing that here, it's just not yet filling in the area back to the west. From there, though, let's look at week 2. Now, the European model continues to paint a drier corridor in a region where we're still waiting to see the full nature of the monsoon set up. But we're wetter to the east and wetter pretty far to the south in the week 2 forecast. Now, what I really want to get to here is what the longer range models are suggesting at this point. So let's step on out there and do that. First, what's changing? Well, a lot of things that are changing right now are happening in the tropics in general. Because over the next 5 days, where we're drier throughout much of Brazil's growing area, there's a lot of upper level subsidence in the atmosphere as most of our tropical forcing, mainly the MJO, is staying somewhere between the Indian Ocean here, getting over toward, what we call, north of Australia into Indonesia and the Philippine Islands. That's the next 5 days. What we then get in the models is that the trade winds continue to stay strong throughout the next 10 days. That's what these blue-green colors represent. And therefore, it's going to largely keep the MJO confined farther to the east. But we start to see that by day 6 through 10, the signals begin to weaken for the suppression of motion here. Now, what I'm saying is that we're kind of taking the lid off of this, allowing things to move a little bit better. And we can really see that when we stretch it out in the long-range models. Now, I know I haven't shown a lot of you these kind of maps recently, but this is what we're looking at from September 16th all the way to November the 1st. That's a 45-day forecast in terms of where the best rising motion is. Now, right now, over the next, week and a half, you see this? That's suppression of vertical motion, and it sits right on top of Brazil. But what then happens beyond that is we see that much of the Central Pacific has subsidence, but we start to see better rising motion here once we finish September and into October over much of South America. And so the net effect of that, if that was a little confusing to go through, I'll just show it to you this way. This is a 1-month sliding window. The first time period here is September 16 to October 16. And where we start off drier in this area and wetter to the east, watch what happens as I play it forward. So this is a 1-month sliding window. We're now out here to September 21st to October 21st. We're favoring drier south. But then going forward, what you're going to notice here is that as I stop it again, why don't we stop it right out here, the 28th. This is September 28th through October 28th. We've removed the drier bias in our central and northern growing areas. We've maintained it farther to the south, such that by the time we get all the way out here to the beginning of November, there is a better chance of returning more normal monsoonal moisture. So that's the main takeaway I can see right now from all of the long-range guidance we have. I think this is more closely tied with the behavior of the MJO, and possibly the drier conditions emerging here in the south could mean that there's going to be a reduction in the strength of the Antarctic Oscillation, also known as the Southern Annular Mode, where we might see fewer fronts making it here into southern Brazil out of Argentina. That's at least some of the best guidance that I've got to share with you at this point. We're going to watch this trend over the weekend and give you some new long-range updates early next week on Monday. So I look forward to watching this and reporting back to you. Have a good rest of your week and weekend, and we'll talk to you then. Thank you.